Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Russ Fordyce from the Business Intelligence Group, and today we're going to interview Herb Hogue from En Pointe out in California. They're an IT services provider. They seem to provide everything under the sun to companies. We're going to talk to Herb about kind of what En Pointe's doing, kind of his role in the organization, also really more importantly the trends in the market and what they're seeing. So, Herb, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So give us the kind of the elevator pitch for En Pointe and what you guys are offering.
Sure. So En Pointe is a 20-year-old established solutions company. We sell both hardware, software, and services. We focus on everything from devices all the way through the data center, including cloud solutions. We're, of course, as you mentioned, based in Southern California, and we have engineers and resources all across the country.
Well, that's great. So you guys are now focused on cloud. I imagine that is changing rapidly, which we'll talk through here in a minute. Now you are the Senior Vice President of, I think, Engineering and Professional Services. I imagine that's probably one of the busiest departments in that company.
It's a lot of fun. Never a dull moment.
So how did you arrive at En Pointe?
So I was a customer for a long time, originally in my career. I've been in IT for well over 20 years, started on an IT help desk all the way up to CIO. About 10 years ago now, and maybe 9, I got on this side of the business with some other companies, and I enjoy it. I enjoy solving a lot of different solutions, and this is where I've stayed. I've been with En Pointe coming up on 3 years.
Well, that's great. So when you're out talking to customers and solving problems, what are the most common things you guys are working through today? What are the hot kind of items in your portfolio?
I think there's several that I hear, and they're all cloud centric. Whether that be customers trying to move their productivity apps to the cloud, meaning Office 365. We see a lot of that, and we've been doing a lot of that. I'm sure as you've read and seen in the press. We also do a significant amount around VMware and their cloud solutions and hybrid cloud solutions. And then, of course, with Microsoft and Azure, we've seen tremendous upswell of inertia around those solution sets, particularly even as recent as last week. Many customers are trying to move and figure out how to incorporate the Azure portfolio. So we're extremely busy on that side of our business today.
So it sounds like you guys are really focused on taking kind of technology in the marketplace and applying it to customers and their needs. Are there any proprietary solutions that you guys are offering, or is it kind of taking the right widget and sticking it into the machine of the enterprise?
Well, I think it's a little of that. I also think it's a little bit of our capability to provide holistic solutions. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the ability to talk about devices and MDM and device-centric solutions. We have the ability to talk about governance and the solutions that manage and maintain and monitor the applications and secure process. We have the ability to do data center, and then of course we have the ability to integrate that with cloud, which gives us a unique ability to be a holistic solution provider as opposed to a provider that focuses on one or two portions. I think the big thing we see right now is everyone's trying to be or move to some type of hybrid platform, which you really need to have an understanding of both areas, which we do have, which is why we're extremely busy right now in that space. Migrating some of the data center to the cloud, not all of it, but you're seeing a lot of that adoption occurring.
And when you're out there with the customers, what size customers are you looking at? Sounds like you're on the higher end of the customer range, maybe mid-size enterprise or large enterprise?
It's funny. We're seeing it from all angles, all sectors and all sizes. I think the only thing that changes due to size is their ability to change quickly. So obviously, smaller customers can adopt and integrate quicker because they have a smaller environment. Larger customers have a little bit different use case. They're looking for more ROI. And obviously they have to integrate their current processes and security architectures into that solution, so it's a longer time horizon.
Okay, and as you guys are kind of out there, pitching or solving problems, what is the number one problem that these companies are coming to you with? Is it, I mean, obviously, I think the solution may be the cloud, but what's the underlying problem that you're seeing the most?
I would say the number one challenge that a lot of customers are experiencing is twofold. One is changing fast enough. Obviously, their executive level leadership in all these companies today are inundated with what the cloud can do for them and their business, and they want to take advantage of those capabilities. So you're seeing tremendous adoption of change within businesses around technology. When I was a CIO, it was very lethargic with change, and customers are now looking to change much, much faster than most IT organizations can handle. So they don't have enough resources, and they're going through a tremendous amount of change. The second is their ability to be proficient in the new technologies. All of the platforms that we're talking about are 2 years or less. Most of their internal resources have no experience, have no background, or limited to no training. So they really depend on partners like us that understand where they are and how to migrate to those types of platforms. And that takes time, and given that we've obviously done many of those types of engagements, they definitely leverage that type of experience from other partners. If they had to make that capital investment themselves for a one-time migration, this doesn't make economic sense for them. And oftentimes need a lot of training through the process to understand how to manage and maintain that environment going forward.
So that's a good topic. Is you guys obviously do a lot of the integration of the technology in with the customer business. What if you had a rough guess? What's the percentage of hardware, software services against kind of the migration services and all the professional services to make it work? What's that look like from a cost standpoint?
Generally, on average, I would say 60 to 70% of the spend is software related, and probably 30 to 40%, probably 30% is hardware, and then the remainder would be services. We're continuing to see that hardware spend shift to software and/or services. It's not going away, but it's different. It's changing.
And as it changes, it's shifting more towards the software side?
I would say so. I mean, obviously, you look at, I'll use Microsoft and/or VMware's push. Obviously, they're trying to migrate that infrastructure somewhere else. So that definitely gives them a different platform and strategy to do so.
That's interesting. Now, as you guys have kind of adopted this, I guess this new kind of cloud focus or these cloud platforms, are there different needs that are driving the customers into the cloud? Is it wanting to have more security or more disaster proof items, or what is it that's really driving folks into the cloud versus building their own kind of data center other than capital?
I think the other piece is most customers are looking for moving ancillary services or secondary services out to another environment. And I'll use Azure as an example for that question. A lot of customers are looking at how do I move branch storage, for example, or tier 2 storage out to the cloud. And Microsoft has done a great job with StoreSimple, and there's other partners as well, NetApp, for example, that have put solution sets in place to easily integrate that to extend their storage environment, for example. So that gives them a great opportunity to move that infrastructure out seamlessly without having to do a significant holistic migration. And it's a low-cost entry point for them, which makes it very simple without having to turn their whole IT organization upside down.
And so so it's interesting you say that, because it sounds like they're kind of moving things that are easy to move into the cloud and things that are kind of secondary to them. What needs to happen to get that shift into the primary role? What needs to happen from a services standpoint or even from an integrator standpoint?
Well, I think two pieces. This evolution with cloud is very similar to the evolution with virtualization. Customers need to trust and believe that it works in production and with their most important business applications, and then they gain continued adoption of it. If you have legacy applications, which most enterprise customers have for sure, making that migration to the cloud is much more difficult for them. If you're developing net new applications, then it's just extending your security architecture and using the cloud as a platform, much easier for adoption. But most enterprise customers don't fall into that use case. which is where we come in trying to help them plan, define, design, and architect and implement solutions to make that transition. Particularly if they're in a highly distributed environment, there's performance metrics and things that they want to validate before they make that holistic jump. So you see that time horizon much longer. But for platforms like SharePoint, for example, that's a much easier migration, right? Because the platform is consistent with what they're used to. They can make that migration much easier than a legacy app.
And in terms of kind of the scope and the horizon for cloud, I don't know if you've ever seen the Gartner hype cycles, but there's always these kind of new technologies that are building up the curve, and then there's these other technologies that are coming through the curve of the hype and getting into real solutions and being adopted. What do you see that's coming up that curve or on the horizon, if you will, but that's really starting to gain some traction in the marketplace and that'll soon be under rapid adoption?
I think there's two key areas. Security across the cloud will be a big one. You're seeing a lot of customers look to, as they make that migration, how do they manage across multiple environments? Whether that be SaaS or PaaS environments, they still want to retain security control and understand where that sits. And there's some new emerging technologies in some of those spaces that I think will be interesting as that space continues to evolve. Microsoft's doing a lot of things in that space as well to do that. And then orchestration across the cloud. And many customers probably won't have just one cloud. Being able to orchestrate virtual assets across those different environments will be very important to manage from a process and workflow perspective. And then governance is always out there when you talk about security and control.
So if we're at we're probably at a take rate of, I don't know, I see stats that like 60 to 70% of new deployments of technology are moving into the cloud, and I know that's probably inflated quite a bit. But as you guys are in a good position to kind of judge that as you're solving things for customers. How much of that is done on-prem versus in the cloud?
It's quickly evolving, and I would say most of the on-prem that we see is in conjunction with a migration path. I spoke a lot about Office 365, and we're doing a number of those engagements even currently with customers migrating them. And usually what happens shortly thereafter when they do an Office 365 migration is a SharePoint migration, because that goes hand in hand. Obviously extending their Active Directory environment, System Center, and before you know it, additional services start kicking in.
Okay. Now, if you had a magic looking glass and you're looking out 5 years, maybe even 10, what does this look like in that period of time? What does En Pointe look like? What does the cloud space look like?
Well, that's a big question. I think the industry is evolved from one where individual solutions were sold to holistic solutions. Having the ability to deliver application development capability, cloud management capability, cloud brokering capability will be important. Managed services is going to evolve across the space. I think it's going to make managed services somewhat easier because customers are going to. I believe you're going to see customers want to spend less and less of their internal IP on managing boxes and more devoted towards their internal IP to help sell whatever widget they may be trying to sell. And you're already starting to see that shift in spend. I'm sure you talked about Gartner hype cycles, and I'm sure you've seen the Gartner study. 70 or 80% of IT spend goes to maintenance. I think you're going to see that invert over the next 5 to 10 years, where IT organizations will be looking for value much more than looking for keeping the lights on. And I think that will occur in that transition, and that'll open a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. Most people think that means all this means less jobs in IT, but it probably means more specialized jobs and more, development resources and jobs like that.
Absolutely. I think this is very .com-like in what we're seeing right now from a talent pool perspective. As I mentioned earlier, there's not enough resources because the technology that we're evolving and deploying today is so new that people haven't either been trained or brought up on it, and the ones that are fluent and trained are in high demand.
So is the secret sauce to all of this the what seems to fall under your command, which is that professional services, the guy that puts all those pieces together? It seems like we have a lot of commodity infrastructure and commodity services. Is it the secret sauce really finding a great IT company to kind of put it all together and to build it out because they're the most knowledgeable people?
Well, I'll put my customer hat on when I was a CIO. At the end of the day, most customers are just looking for someone to solve problems and be their advocate. And given that we have such a diverse portfolio, we can be holistic and agnostic, which puts us in a unique position. Sales develops and manages and maintains our relationships, which we have many, and our engineers are responsible for solving problems, helping to find and design future solutions, and being their advocate across whatever solution set makes best sense for their particular use case. Many of our relationships have extended well over a decade, and I think the reason we have customers of that longevity is because of that ability, but because of those services that we've delivered. We're going to build on that because we've recognized that the more value we add to our customers, the greater trust and obviously spend we're able to capture and maintain. But at the end of the day, if we're doing a good job in solving problems, our business model is going to be scalable, and we'll be fine. If we're not solving problems, then obviously we know what comes with that.
Yeah, your value comes down a little bit. So now, when you're not in the office and pushing buttons and fixing servers, and what are you doing on a personal level?
Well, I don't push too many server buttons anymore. We got a pretty large operation. We're doing a significant amount of revenue, and we have engineers flying all over the country. I spend a lot of my time, speaking with customers and going to conferences and trying to keep up on the latest and greatest. From a personal perspective, I spend time with the family as much as I can. I have a young daughter, so I try to have some fun there, and that's about all the time I have left over at the end of the day.
Well, as you may have seen, I have a young daughter too. I think she was at my door a few minutes ago.
I have a little one myself.
Well, I appreciate your time today. It sounds like you guys are definitely off and rolling and moving in the right direction, helping customers kind of migrate their infrastructures into the cloud. And it sounds like you guys have a great portfolio.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited about what the future has to hold for us in the industry. I think these are very exciting times. So thanks for your time and including us today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been an interview with Herb Hogue of En Pointe Technologies. I encourage you, it's ENPOINTE Technologies. There's a link at the Big Awards website, and we look forward to keeping an eye on them and see what they're up to, and I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thank you very much.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.